Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored Never Boring. I have in my collection of board games quite a few titles developed by the design group Prospero Hall. I first became aware of Prospero Hall when I had a chance to review the game How to Rob a Bank from Jumbo. It's a really fun game that I still have on my shelf to this day. Later on, the company started developing games for Ravensburger and put out titles like Villainous, Horrified and Jurassic Park Danger, all games that happen to rank in my top 50. These days, they seem to be creating games exclusively for Funko, producing enjoyable distractions derived from popular IP such as The Goonies and E.T. Personally, I think Prospero Hall makes some really good titles. They seem to be adept at taking a theme and distilling its essence into compact games with streamlined rules and relatively short playing times. They are usually simple enough for younger gamers, engaging enough for all gamers, and thematic enough for fans of the franchise in question. So I thought it was time to shine a light on some of their games that I have in my own collection that I haven't already talked about. I gave the Always Bored Never Boring club members a chance to vote on the order in which I covered 4 different Prospero Hall titles, and the overwhelming favourite was Jaws. So let's, wait for it, dive in. I write all my own material, you know. Jaws is a 2 to 4 player game from Ravensburger for ages 12 and up. The box says it plays in 60 minutes, I would be inclined to give it closer to 90. One of the players will take on the role of Bruce, trying to eat swimmers, avoid detection and live their best life. The rest of the players work together controlling Chief Brody, Quint and Hooper. Much like Quint, the game is in 2 parts. The first part is a hidden movement deduction game in which Bruce swims around eating people while the heroes try to get everyone out of the water and locate the devious fish. The second part sees the heroes taking the fight to the open seas as they board the Orca and try to inflict enough damage on Bruce to kill him before their boat gets eaten right out from underneath them. In effect, you are getting 2 distinct games. The result of the first game has a direct impact on the setup for the second game, but in all other regards they play out completely differently with different rules and objectives. It's a really neat idea that does an excellent job of capturing the plot of the movie and transforming key moments into exciting gameplay. And if you're ever short on time, you can just play the first or second part of the game as a standalone adventure using special setup instructions and winning guidelines presented in the rules. Part 1, or Act 1 as the instructions call it, is Amity Island. To set up, you lay out the board on the Amity side. Can we just take a moment to appreciate this board art? It's excellent. It beautifully realises key locations, has detailed art that isn't too fussy and yet is still clear enough for players to immediately recognise all the different zones in play. And yes, if you look up Amity Island online, the shape of the island is correctly presented here. Next you shuffle the Amity event deck and place the cards nearby next to a, wait for it, pool of swimmer tokens. Note that one of the swimmer tokens is special because it's Brody's son and only comes into play when a relevant event card turns up. It's worth 2 swimmers if the shark eats it. The hero players, referred to as the crew, now get their character cards, tokens and special equipment. Quint is the green meeple, he gets his little Orca to bob around in and 2 barrels. The rest of the barrels are placed at the shop in the middle of the board. Quint starts at the east dock. Hooper is the blue meeple, he gets a little white boat to bob around in and the fish finder token. He starts at the west dock. Brody is the black token. He doesn't get a boat, but he does get some binoculars and a closed beach token. He starts the game at the Amity PD. Finally, the player controlling Bruce takes the swimmer track and places a red clip on the 0 slot. This clip will track how well fed the shark is throughout the game. They also take 4 shark power tokens and a cool shark playing piece. As this is a hidden movement game, the shark piece isn't placed on the board at the start of the game. Instead, the player takes a sheet from the tracker pad and writes a starting location in the relevant spot. With that done, the game is ready to begin. The aim for Bruce is to eat 9 swimmers, while the aim for the crew is to attach 2 barrels to Bruce. If either of those things happens, this part of the game ends. Play progresses over rounds comprising 3 phases. First there is the event phase, where you turn over the top event card. This will tell you where to place new swimmers. For example, this Shark Alert card says to place 1 swimmer at the south beach and 2 swimmers at the west beach. Then you perform any additional instructions printed on the card. So here we would check how many swimmers the shark has already eaten, and if it's 3 or less, we put out some additional swimmers to help him out a bit. In phase 2, the shark goes to work. The shark player may take up to 3 actions, and for each action they can move into an adjacent water space, not diagonally, or eat 1 swimmer at their current location. These actions are plotted secretly on the shark tracker pad. The shark player will then tell the crew how many swimmers were eaten at each location, removing the corresponding swimmer tokens from the board. If 9 swimmers have been eaten, this part of the game is over. Additionally, as the game progresses, the crew will drop barrels with motion trackers into the sea. If the shark moves into spaces with barrels, the shark player must tell the crew which motion sensors were activated, although they don't need to say when they were activated. That means by the end of the shark turn, the crew will know if and where any swimmers were eaten and if any motion sensors were activated. This will help them to pinpoint the location of Bruce later on. With so few locations on the board, it may sound like Bruce is going to have a hard time evading detection, but it's super easy, barely an inconvenience. Sorry, couldn't resist in a video about a movie-themed board game. To help him, the shark has 4 power tokens, and in each turn they are allowed to play 1 in addition to their 3 actions. Each of these powers is different. Feeding Frenzy allows them to eat all the swimmers in a location for a single action. Evasive Moves prevents any motion sensors from triggering. Out of Sight allows the shark player to lie about their whereabouts if they would be detected by Hooper's fish finder or Brody's binoculars, and Speed Burst lets the shark move 3 spaces for a single action. After a power has been played, the token is discarded. Additionally, the shark player must tell the crew that they used a power, although they don't have to say which one. So the shark is super sneaky, but it's still facing a tough challenge because it's outnumbered and the crew have some tricks of their own. In phase 3 of the turn, each crew member can take up to 4 actions. They can act in any order they wish, and each of them has different actions available to them. Quint stays in the Orca at all times. He can use 1 action to move to an adjacent water space. He can also use 1 action to pull 1 swimmer in his space into the boat to return them to the supply, thus saving them from the shark. He can use 1 action to pick any number of barrels from a dock, a water space, or Hooper's boat. Obviously, he has to be in the space with the barrels to collect them. Finally, once per round, if Quint has a barrel at his disposal, he can fire it into his current space or an adjacent water space. If Bruce is in that location, the shark player immediately reveals where they are and attaches a barrel to their shark card. If this is the second barrel they have been hit with, this part of the game is over. Hooper is also in a boat, meaning he cannot move on dry land, and he has similar actions to Quint. He can move up to 2 spaces through water, rescue a swimmer, or pick up barrels from the dock or a water space. Additionally, Hooper can use an action to give all the barrels he has to Quint if he is in the same space. Finally, Hooper has a fish finder. Once per round for 1 action, he can place the fish finder token in the space he's in. When he does this, the shark must say where they are in relation to the fish finder. If they are in the same space, they must reveal their location. If they are in an adjacent space, not diagonally, they must say they are nearby. If they are in any other location, they must say they are not in that location or nearby. Of course, if they use the shark power out of sight, the shark player will always say they haven't been detected, even if they would be normally. Finally, we have Brody. Without a boat, he can't take the fight to the shark just yet, but he has a vital role. He can use 1 action to move 1 space on land, or to rescue 1 swimmer from a beach. If he is at the shop, he can use 1 action to pick up 1 barrel. He is now carrying that barrel, and he can only carry 1 at a time. If he's at either dock, he can use 1 action to drop a barrel he's carrying. Brody also has 2 special tokens he can use once each per round. For 1 action, if he is at one of the 4 beaches, he can place his binoculars on that beach. If the shark is at that beach, they must reveal themselves. Finally, if Brody is at the mayor's office, he can use an action to close a beach that has no swimmers at it. Place the beach closed sign on that beach. The first time you would place swimmers at the closed beach, do not place them and instead turn the token to the opening soon side. The second time you would place swimmers at the beach, do not place any swimmers, but remove the token from play. From then on, swimmers can return to the beach as normal. It's only possible to close 1 beach at a time, but as soon as a beach reopens, Brody is free to slam his fist on the mayor's desk again. And that's it for this act. The crew will use their unique abilities to close in on Bruce, saving swimmers while feeding enough barrels to Quint to ensure he can attach the 2 barrels necessary to win. Meanwhile, Bruce evades detection and munches through as many swimmers as possible. It's quite simple, turns move fast, but it's excellent fun. There is real tension for all the players. Finding Bruce isn't easy, but the crew have lots of actions at their disposal, and they all have unique ways of forcing the shark's head above water. And they only need to connect with 2 barrels, so if they can drive the shark into the open quite quickly, they can really put the shark player on the back flipper. However, that shark is incredibly sneaky, and the 4 power tokens make it hard to figure out exactly what has happened in a round. I particularly like how the shark player must provide some information, but what the information means is rarely obvious. For example, consider a round where 2 swimmers were eaten in a single space. The shark player announced they had used a special power, and then when Hooper dropped the fish finder in the space the swimmers were taken from, the shark player said they weren't there or nearby. What does that mean? Does it mean the shark used Feeding Frenzy to eat up 2 swimmers and then swam 2 spaces away? Does it mean the shark used 2 actions to eat 2 swimmers, 1 action to swim to an adjacent space, and then used out of sight to avoid detection from the fish finder? Or even cheekier, maybe the shark gave up its 3rd action in favour of staying on the exact same space, ready to snap up any unwary swimmers arriving in the following turn. Or does it mean the shark used 2 actions to eat 2 swimmers and then played Burst of Speed to move 3 spaces away with its final action? For a relatively streamlined, straightforward rule set, there's plenty to think about, and all players are constantly going to feel like they are 1 move away from everything going south. The crew will face ratcheting panic as more and more swimmers bob beneath the waves, while the shark player will have to put on their best poker face when Quint is firing barrels nearby. Throw in a little extra chaos from event cards that can cause captains to fall out of their boats, extra swimmers to appear, or crew to gain extra actions, and I find the result is a neat, perfectly formed slice of hidden movement gameplay. And of course, whatever the outcome of the fight to save swimmers on Amity Island, the real challenge still awaits. To set up the second act of the game, the Orca, you flip the game board. This side of the board shows R to the wrecked Orca divided into 8 sections. The game includes 8 Orca tiles with damaged and undamaged sides, and to start the game you position those 8 tiles on the board with the undamaged side facing up. Next, shuffle the shark ability cards and give the shark player the number of cards indicated by the final position of the swimmer track from Act 1. For example, if the shark successfully ate 9 swimmers, deal the shark player 10 random shark ability cards. Each of the crew members gets 2 gear cards. Quint has a machete and a flare, Hooper gets a hammer and a rifle, and Brody gets a baseball bat and a pistol. Additionally, they get a random selection of equipment cards as indicated by the final position of the swimmer track from Act 1. Using the example of a game in which Bruce ate 9 swimmers, the crew would get an additional 3 random equipment cards. The crew may divide these cards up as they see fit. The crew should also flip over their character cards to the reverse side, which has a damage tracker on it because, now there's a chance they are going to get eaten. But the shark player also flips their card and positions a wound tracker. This is a fight to the death. Each of the crew takes a target token in their colour and then places their meeple on any space on the Orca they wish. The shark player doesn't choose a starting location at this time. They remain hidden for now. But they do take 3 resurface tokens and they shuffle and set aside the deck of resurface cards. Now the final showdown can begin, which plays out over turns comprising 6 steps. First, the shark player reveals 3 resurface cards, placing them on the board spaces marked A, B and C. Each of these cards shows where the shark might resurface this turn, an evade number inside the shark's fin, and a number of attack dice. Some will also have a shake-off symbol which looks like a fishing hook and will allow the shark player to remove any attachable weapons it has been hit with on previous turns. As a visual aid, the shark player places small resurface tokens on the board in the spaces indicated by the resurface cards. Next, the shark player secretly chooses which resurface card they're going to use by placing the appropriate large resurface token face down in front of them. They can also choose 1 shark ability card to play face down at this time. Shark abilities are single use and are discarded at the end of the round, but they are incredibly powerful when employed at the correct moment, so the shark player needs to select with care. Next, the crew must predict what the shark will do. Each crew member can move up to 2 spaces. They can move through boat spaces, or if sections of the boat have been destroyed, they can swim through water spaces. Moving from water to a boat section requires 2 moves. Each crew member can also select 1 weapon to use to hit Bruce when he resurfaces, and then they use their coloured target tokens to indicate which space they intend to attack with that weapon. If the chosen weapon is a melee weapon or an attachable weapon with a fishhook icon, the crew member has to target a water space they are in or adjacent to. But ranged weapons can be used to target any water space. Additionally, some crew gear cards offer other options beyond attacking. For example, Chum forces the shark player to reveal one of the locations where they won't be resurfacing that turn. Once the crew are prepared, the shark player reveals their resurface token. Crew members who targeted the correct space can now attack if they choose to. And it's important the crew have the option to decline attacking, as ranged weapons are only single use, unless you have some extra ammo. So if the shark has played a card with a high evade value, sometimes it's better to take your finger off the trigger and wait until a better opportunity arises. To attack with a melee or ranged weapon, the player rolls the number of dice indicated by the weapon and adds up the total hits. They then deduct the evade value from the resurfaced card the shark player used. The result is the amount of damage inflicted, which is tracked on the shark's health tracker. For attachable weapons, no roll is required. The weapon is automatically deployed successfully, but the shark can use a card with a shake-off symbol to remove the weapon on a later turn. Finally, the shark retaliates. It can either target an adjacent boat space or a crew member in the water. In other words, crew members on the boat are safe from direct attacks. Someone should point that out to Quint. To attack, the shark player rolls the number of dice indicated on their resurface card and adds up the total number of hits. They compare this to the toughness value of the boat section. Undamaged boat sections have a white value and a black value. If the result is equal to or greater than the white value, that section of the boat is damaged. You flip it over to the damaged side. If the number of hits is equal to or greater than the black number, that section of the boat is completely destroyed and removed from play. If the boat section has already been damaged, then there is only a black number, and it's much lower than the black number was on the undamaged side. Crew members on boat sections removed from play fall into the water. This puts them at great risk, because instead of attacking the boat, the shark can choose to attack any crew member in the same water space or an adjacent water space. The shark player rolls the damage dice and applies the total number of hits to the target. Furthermore, at the end of the round, the shark is allowed to make an additional bonus attack on any crew member in the water nearby, rolling 1 dice for each target in their space or an adjacent space and applying hits as damage. To put it another way, get out of the water. And this continues round after round. The shark surfaces, faces attacks, retaliates, then dives again to begin the next round. The game will end in success for the crew if the shark has reduced to 0 wounds. Bruce will win if they eat all 3 crew members or completely destroy all 8 sections of the Orca. That's it. I really like this second section of the game. I don't think it's as strong as the first part, but I love the way it captures that final nerve-jangling encounter with the shark from the film as the Orca slowly sinks into the sea. The cat and mouse action of the movie is perfectly represented on the tabletop as the crew try to second guess where the shark will pop up next. Will the shark use the resurface card with the highest attack value, use the card with the shake-off ability, or psych out everyone by using the card with a weak attack because it will allow them to take a bite out of an already damaged section of the boat? I have seen much bigger games with dozens of miniatures and extensive rules fail to come anywhere this close to capturing a theme so well. And this is a very tough fight for the crew, as it should be, especially if they lost the first act of the game, but it makes victory even sweeter, and I defy anyone who lands the killing blow on the shark not to shout, "Smile, you son of a bitch." And also, I just want to briefly go back to the board design for this section of the game. It's incredibly clever, because as the Orca falls apart, the landscape you are fighting over changes dramatically, working both for and against you at different times. If we look at the intact boat, in this example we can see that Hooper is adjacent to 2 boat spaces and 1 water space. But once the boat section to his right becomes damaged, he is now adjacent to 2 boat spaces and 2 water spaces. This means he is now in a position to attack 2 different water spaces with a melee weapon instead of just 1. But that versatility comes at a cost, because now Bruce can attack Hooper's section of the boat from either of the 2 adjacent water spots. And this will constantly change as the boat disintegrates. It's incredibly tense as the crew members watch the waters close in and they realise that before long they're going to be swimming with a very hungry fish. Overall, I just think this is a really nice execution of the entire theme. There are some issues though. I expect some players won't enjoy the change of pace from Act 1 to Act 2. Stopping the game to flip the board and set up an entirely different experience may feel a bit clunky and unnatural. And with 2 completely different games in one box, it does mean you have to learn, remember and teach 2 rule sets, which might seem like a lot of legwork for what is a relatively lightweight game. Additionally, I would say that the shark tends to have the easier time of it. The crew are really pushed to inflict enough damage to kill Bruce in Act 2, and failing in Act 1 just makes it even harder. It can be a bit demoralising to lose Act 1 and then realise that has set you up for an even tougher challenge, leading to cascading failures. Also, the game does play a little longer than advertised, and as Act 2 involves repeating the same 6 steps over and over again, it may start to feel like the game is dragging out a bit too long. I've never seen a game wrapped up in 1 hour. I'm sure it's possible if players are well versed in all of the actions and strategies available to them, but I suspect it's not the norm for most people. Personally, a game running long doesn't bother me, and you're still likely to have the experience wrapped up in well under 2 hours. For me, these gripes are relatively minor ones that would certainly feel much worse in a larger game. And in total, this game does a lot more right than it does wrong. I thoroughly enjoy it. There are definitely other Prospero Hall games I like a lot more. This one didn't make it into my top 50 games list, and there are better hidden movement games out there. But this is a really good example of capturing the theme of a film or franchise and distilling it into a small, relatively inexpensive game that packs in a lot of fun and flavour. And that's all I've got to say about that. Thank you so much to the Always Bored Never Boring club members for voting for this review. You already know which Prospero Hall title we will be looking at next. And of course, thank you everyone for taking some of your time to listen to me today. If you liked the video, please consider pressing the like button. If you really like the video, please consider subscribing if you don't already do so. And hopefully, I will see you all again very soon. Bye bye everyone. Bye bye.